Okay, so here's the problem. Chiaroscuro. I gave you guys options. You could do color pencil, which I think is relatively easy to do, or you could do watercolor, which I think is probably the more fun thing to do with chiaroscuro. So I am going to switch over to the old drawing table here. I don't know how good this is going to look. We're going to have to see. It's kind of focused. I really should do this upstairs where the light is good, but the camera that I have for it becomes a real hassle. So let's see what I can do here. All right, first you need to start with a light drawing. Now, unfortunately, because I thought I was in a time rush today, I just grabbed any drawing I could find out of this book that wasn't too overshaded. All these pencil lines will show through, which is not what you want. I would normally draw also very lightly, but because this is such a high class camera, drawing lightly is probably not an option because you guys wouldn't see what it is that I'm doing. So I'm just going to take like a second or two here, clean up some of the places that I had shadows, some of the places where I was just wantonly and recklessly sketching, because there's quite a bit. Oh, always get a pencil with a point on it. Oh my god! Look at all that. I'm gonna have to invest in a pencil sharpener if this goes on another week. I think. I mean, like a mounted one. All right, so clean line, clean line, clean line, clean jaw. All right, not perfect, but you'll get the gist. And plus, you get to see what it looks like when you paint over pencil lines, which is not the thing you really want to have showing. You don't want to see the shading from your pencils. Now, I'm going to use a light source. I'm going to dedicate my light sources coming from that direction. I'm going to hopefully find a soft brush. Now, the problem with this brush is my son is taking up painting and he's using acrylics. Your watercolor brush should never see oils or acrylics. The reason why is the color stores in the bristles. That would be the color load that you are searching for. And if it doesn't store in the bristles, you can't paint very well. So that's kind of a key thing. Sorry, just stepping over here to see if everything is in sight. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get a cup of water, preferably a cup of water that's not going to spill on you. I have a fancy cup here because it was what I was able to find. I'm also going to take the time to clear off at least one of my areas here for mixing paints. Now, watercolors are always active. And if you've heard this all before, my apologies, but the possibility of watercolor bleeding on watercolor is incredibly high. Also, what would help your life is to have decent watercolor paper. It doesn't mean you have to, it just means you have to kind of go with the give and take of what's happening on the watercolor. All right, now I'm gonna get a little water here. I'm gonna start to make some skin tone for her. Now this skin tone I will probably paint over in a little bit. I'm gonna start with some orange. And you'll notice, especially if you're using these hobby sets of watercolors, that the intensity of these colors are not always the greatest, because you paid, $2.30 for a pack. A lot of times you could pay a ton of money for watercolors. Now, here's the part that's going to be interesting. I'm going to check my orange here. That's not really the color I'm going for. She is at least 50% American Indian. So I'm going to add in a little red here. And I'm going to use a molecule of blue. When I say a molecule, I'm really meaning very little blue to deaden that orange. I don't want her looking like she has a spray tan on. All right. And then I check my color again. I could probably live with that color. That's not too bad. But I have to pay attention because if I'm going to do this dramatic lighting effect, this color ends up being kind of a shadow, even though it's her normal skin tone. So it's going to be in between whatever is the actual shadow and wherever the light is falling. Now, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but right when I put down that stroke of color, it started to leave little dots. That means that spot is already oversaturated. So I'm going to work into other areas. I'm going to paint quickly. Part of the reason I'm painting quickly is because I don't have a lot of time, being that this isn't watercolor paper. So if yours ends up looking a little sketchy in the end, don't feel bad. That's fine. Sketchy's all right for this assignment. Actually, it's the whole reason I love watercolors, is because to me, watercolors are as close as you can humanly get to using paint as a drawing medium. All right, cool. So now I got to figure out what her favorite color is, because she'd probably be wearing that. Oh, wait a minute. I still have some skin tone to do here. Now, the beautiful thing about trying to attempt chiaroscuro with watercolors is your ability to blend or reblend watercolors or make them darker is great. You do have to wait around till it dries up to produce that effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with her jeans here. I'm going to just make them all blue from the get-go, because the light's coming this way. I will put blue here. All right. And I will start adding, I think this is brown, a little bit of red brown to her horns. Now I've got red already on this section. I did not bother to clean that up because I was lazy. But I'm going to take advantage of whatever that is. So I got a little black in there. I just mixed up my black and my brown. I'm going to throw a little brown in there. Boom, boom. Check my color. I'm okay with that. I actually could use that in other areas for shadows. So I'm going to use a little bit of it here just to kind of do in part of her horn. All right. I also realized that I should go back and grab some more of the skin tone because I've ignored parts of the hand. And I'll just do the whole thing in the skin tone. And then I'll darken in a little bit. All right. Same with her feet. No skin tone, this whole leg. Now you can see already the mess that I kind of left behind with the feet is starting to show. So that's why erasing the pencil marks are very important, because they will come back to haunt you. All right, cool. All right, so the arm was the first thing I did. So I'm going to bring a little water down to the skin tone. I'm going to wake it up. I'm going to fade it back. All right. And you notice I got a paper towel. I'm coming back and clean this. I bring a little water down. I wake that up. I fade it back. Now I've got a gradual shadow on there. I'm kind of going to go around and do that to everything first, but I still want to leave a little bit of white just to create that effect of a highlight hitting it. All right, and I'm going to put some skin tone under her chin because I'm going to just darken on top of that anyway. Okay, so the lighting effect that we're trying to achieve, we're getting very close to the part where we're going to start adding the dark areas. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to recheck anything, see if I need this blue anymore. I can build up the intensity of this blue by overlapping more blue, like so. So that's one option that I can do to start to create that lighting effect. All right. And you'll notice I keep wiping my brush because I'm trying to work fairly dry because of the limitations of the actual paper, which isn't a horrible thing, but it can be kind of annoying from time to time. All right, hit these fingers here. All right, so while my booty's drying over here, I'm going to darken up my orange, probably with a little bit more blue, to be honest. The only downside of doing that is that when we do this, it's very hard to judge. So what I'm attempting to do is making much darker orange. And if I remember correctly, I actually had some red in her skin tone too. So I'm going to put a little bit of that red. And then I'm going to check this color here. All right, it's brown. It's darker. I like that. But it's not going to be as dark as I want it. Even with that said, like I've told you, you can continue to build up the colors. So I'm going to start with this first. Right, there's the underside of that arm. Here's the underside of this arm. I'm going to get this armpit going over here. I'm going to do the back side. I'm going to take and get this edge of her leg. I'm going to get the inside of this leg. I really want to get the downside of her foot, but I think I'm going to divide this so I get a bigger contrast. So I'm taking some of this color and I'm moving it closer to the top. I'm going to stir in a little black and see what that'll do for me. That's pretty dark. All right, so the underside of her foot. And even though it looks dark initially, it is going to lighten up a bit as you're going. I'm going to take and put one bead of dark right there. I'm going to take another, well, I can't do too much. So let me buzz over here and work on the hands. So the entire palm of the hand is probably going to be in shadow. Right? Thumb may not. Underside of the chin, shadow. Back in the ear, shadow. What if I want to do her horns? Well, let's stir up the horn or stir up the black and add a little of that black to that red. It's not bad if you keep a separate piece of paper just to check your colors. Having several different sizes of brushes helps too. Otherwise, you're going to have to really concentrate on your touch as you're going. Where I want to use this black to shade her jeans, but I might have to blend it. I'm definitely going to have to blend it. So I go to the underside here, boom, boom. curve up this direction. All right. Bring a little more dark here. A little dark in the armpit. If you're getting tired of waiting for your paints to dry as you do this, you can almost always take a hair dryer and shorten your time, or at least shorten your drying time. Now, even though I'm using black, I've still got a little bit of color in there, and that may not be evident by the camera. I'm also going to mix this black a little more with the color of her shirt, so I can start doing some shadowing here. Back here on her jawline. There we go. Where her eyes are. Now, how do I make those white highlights pop up? Well, I'm still waiting for this to dry. So in the meantime, I am going to take a lesson from Caravaggio, and I'm going to start to darken everything around it. Like so. Now I'm seeing a lot of lines in here, which means what I'll have to do is when it dries up to come back with a wet brush and just kind of blend it. But the idea of taking everything else darker away or adding that around it is really what is going to make the white pop out. And this may not be enough coats. Like you'll put down this first coat and you'll be like, nah, it's not as dark as I like. It's watercolor. Put down another color on top of it. The only thing that doesn't work for is if you're trying to make it go lighter. If you're trying to create a lighter effect, it's not very, trying to look for the word. It's not very likely you're ever going to lighten watercolor. You could get it wet. You can put a paper towel on it. You could try to lift some of the color off and let it soak into the paper towel. Usually what you end up with is kind of a mess. That's a Hail Mary pass when you do something like that. Oh, see, now that one was kind of a mistake. I should have checked my water levels. Then again, I am doing an entire assignment in less than 30 minutes. So when I give you guys a week, I do get a little upset. Technically, this might be week 2. I can't remember. All right, and I just keep going around. Now I've left a little bit of white between the figure and the black of the background. And I'm going to go back in a little bit and clean that up. She has totally white silver hair. So part of me is trying to figure out how to shade that. I'm guessing it's going to have to be some kind of gray at some point. To make the shadow areas. All right. I'm even starting to see kind of a buckle in my paper, which means it is very oversaturated. Part of what I'm doing to try to compensate for that is I'm working all the way around it. I'm trying to let areas dry as other areas are being worked on. hate to say it, but the older Crayola watercolors were a lot better than these new ones. These new ones have a weird kind of stick to it. That's probably the binder. They probably switched to a different type of gum Arabic. I never know quite how to say that. Now that was all black coat one, and I still have body work to do. Like part of what I was waiting for is for the booty to dry up enough that I could take just a wet brush and start to blend that. And you'll notice when I'm doing this blending, there is a lot of brush cleaning. And that's about all I can blend at the moment right there. I'm gonna have to let that dry up again. I'm seeing I could probably add more to that. So it's really this process where you're just gonna keep working, making it tighter, making it darker, adding value on top of value, color on top of color, hope on top of hope. Sorry, it sounded like a Star Wars episode there for a minute. Part of what helps is when we spin our brush, hopefully having a steady hand. I'm going to move my colors just for a minute here. So I want to get close to the face without bleeding onto the face. And you'll even notice here wherever I've doubled up the black watercolor, it's getting significantly darker. So my watercolor effect should keep getting better and better. Say should. All right, that's got a lot of drawing to do. All right, so with that said, where else can I darken this up? I'm going to take a little bit of brown. I'm going to use brown as a shadow here. I want to see if I can go a little darker into the hand. It appears I can. So I'm going to use that. All right, that got much darker. Bottom of the foot. Boom, boom. That got darker. Going back to my paper towel. Trying to extend some of that watercolor. Now, if you're using a hairdryer to dry your watercolor, you got to pay attention, because if it's super wet like this, it will just kick that watercolor around. There won't be a happy moment for you. Let's put it that way. All right. Now I'm going to come back here. I'm going to check this black. I want it lighter. So I'm going to grab a little more water in here. Did you notice when you get to the stage, you really have to lift your arm up to stop yourself from dragging onto the paper. All right. Now I'm going to show you a trick. I didn't want it quite that dark. So I'm going to take my paper towel, since it's wet, and see how much of it I can lift. And I have to be careful because I'm by that wet spot. All right. I lifted some. That's not bad. I actually want it darker than that, so that's not a horrible amount. I'm also going to reach into this black that I've already mixed, even though this is a little bit risky. And I'm going to use that black that's actually on the paper as part of the hair. And now I got just water, and I'm bringing it to there to fade it. If she was closer, I would consider doing individual strands of hair, although I wouldn't do it as, here's every strand of hair. I would just imply, and from this distance, really you can add a texture, but doing individual hair seems kind of crazy. All right, so the question is now, how much farther do I keep pulling this out? you know. While it can be a personal preference, remember we're trying to create a lighting effect. So the darker she gets, and right now I'm just using straight up brown. I could go black. I left her kneecap pretty shiny. Once again, clean brush going down to the brown. Relatively clean brush going down to the brown. Right. Hopefully that looks pretty decent on the camera. Honestly, I will not know until I start to edit the paint. Still want to bring a little darker in here on the backside. I mean, that's really it. Wherever the light is not, is where everything is supposed to get darker and darker and darker. Let me see if I can really pump up the edge of that weapon. These are like mini scythes that I invented for her, but I saw something on a catalog the other day that looked like one of them. So I might have to actually get that just for. Okay, so I'm kind of at a point where I can't go any further. Would I continue to darken this? Yes, I would totally continue to darken this. I would keep going. I'm not going to be able to do anything with it until it dries. So it's wet enough now. I know that working on a different area for 5 minutes is not going to help my plight. So I'm just going to stop right there and allow you guys to get to work. All right. So if you want to do it in watercolor, that's the way you do it. If you want to do it in color pencil, come back this afternoon and I will show you how to do it in color pencil.